Okay, I'm not going to talk you through this in detail, so I'm not actually doing the presentation, but just where there's information missing or where we're going to flesh it out with words rather than pictures, I will try and explain as I go along. So, let's see this as a thingy. Okay, so some of these slides don't take very long to get through, so plainly, that's a title slide and our mission statement, so as a kick-off. The beginning part really is just about trying to define the problem on a macro scale rather than kind of the individual problems faced by our young people. So these are just some of the headlines. We've reduced these from when we spoke earlier on. So some of the headlines in terms of the environment that most of our young people find themselves in. So we can talk a little bit about that and about the kinds of problems that exist in those communities, those neighbourhoods, and then focus in on our young people in particular. So this really is a backdrop to a story really about the kinds of young people that we see. So these are some of the issues in their families. It's not an exhaustive list, and it certainly doesn't represent them all, but it's a snapshot of the kinds of things that our young people are facing in their daily lives. And particularly the one at the bottom, I think, is the most shocking, is that here we are, 2015, is it? And we are still meeting young people who simply aren't even being fed enough. And then they turn up at school. So here's kind of the reason they come to us. So they turn up at school and they're identified as a problem in some way. They're failing at school or not getting on with their peers or withdrawn in some way. But behind it are all these kinds of issues. But the one thing that they do bring, and here's where we kind of change tack from all the misery, is that. So they are all here voluntarily and they've all made a decision to do something about their situation. So rather than see themselves as victims of all of that, actually these are people who are taking an active role in their own lives and trying to make something of them. So they come to us, and here are the things that we do. So this is just kind of the headlines again of our offering and the purpose that we do it. Okay, so these are a couple of case studies. The first one, Tegan, we'll talk through. So Tegan is a good example because she's kind of away from what we're seen as doing. Kind of treats for naughty boys is what sometimes is what we are accused of, or at least I wonder whether we are. That's something we fear we're viewed as, if you like. Tegan, however, young carer, so chronically ill mother, autistic brother, so she was a young carer from a very young age and had all kinds of issues as a result. Very little belief in herself. She has gone on to do well at college, has offers from universities now, and is moving on. So there's a good kind of a hopeful story, if you like. Jack also, perhaps he does fit the stereotype of treats for naughty boys. However, there's an awful lot of kind of background and history behind that in terms of where his issues came from, and a positive story at the end of it. So from being somebody who was potentially heading for jail, he is now in a full-time job, in a steady relationship, bringing up a child of his own as a positive and committed dad. So there's a couple of stories to tell and to kind of illustrate what we do. So what we want from them is 60 plus people a year. We can talk about what those people will get from it. They're not just mentors and memory makers. They are folk who will volunteer in any kind of capacity, and we can talk about the sorts of things that they get from that experience. And of course, money, so to the tune of about £200,000 a year. And then we can talk about actually what that means as a breakdown. So as a one-off payment or as a monthly donation. So we can talk through some of these. So these are kind of self-explanatory. The one that I think you guys did think needed a bit of clarification. So just for those that haven't seen this before, a full team of mentors with your name on it. Currently, we train them and we give them a number. Potentially, it could be Team Nationwide, Team Zurich. And in terms of what that buys you, there is kind of a publicity angle. There would be a launch of that team in the newspaper, and potentially a catch up at the end of their year to see what they'd achieved over the course of the year and so on. So there are some kind of good PR things that come along with that. And of course, we would also send out regular updates. Probably not that many, but let's say anyway, whatever. The logistics of that are neither here nor there. But we can plainly that buys a team with your name and 50,000 quid, a place in Smash history. Again, this is not something I'm going to talk through in any detail. This is just a backdrop to suggest actually these are the kinds of things you can do. So how do you get the money to us? What kinds of support do we need? And then we can go through maybe in a bit more detail. Actually, these are the specifics that you can get involved in. So we can talk about what some of those might actually look like on the ground. And a little punchy line to end. So that's it. Comments welcome, as ever.